Hi, everybody. It's Lisa Coffey from the Ayurveda Experience. Welcome to day 2 of our 3rd World Ayurveda Summit. We've been having a really good time. Everybody, now I'd love for you to just check in and let me know your name and where you're from. Say hi to everybody. That would be great. Here we go. Carla from Vegas. Nice to see you, Carla. Thanks for being here. So yesterday we had a great chat with Lakshmi Devi, and we talked all about Ayurveda and massage and different spa treatments and things like that. Tomorrow we're going to be speaking with, see, here's my Vata mind. I can't even remember. So tomorrow we got a great one that I'll remember for you in a bit. And today we're speaking with my dear friend KP Khalsa. KP is actually on the road working, and he was kind enough to take this time out to talk with us today. So welcome, KP. Thanks for being here.
Sure, my pleasure. Nice to see you.
Thanks. So we've got people here from all over the world, from Florida, from Tennessee, from Michigan, from Massachusetts. Yesterday we had somebody from Croatia, Menlo Park, Gran Canaria. This is fantastic. San Antonio, North Carolina. So you guys, if you have any questions for KP, be sure to put them in the chat box, and I'll ask him as we go. So KP, just what I ask everybody at the beginning of these things, because it's so interesting, and everybody has a different story. How did you come to Ayurveda?
I was an adventurous hippie in high school, and I was looking for all kinds of new experiences and lifestyles and such. I was on a spiritual search as a teenager, and as a backdrop to that, I had developed a very serious degenerative disease when I was a child. I was diagnosed as age 10. It was very painful. It was a spinal degenerative disease that was invariably fatal. But as a 10-year-old, you don't really process that information, you know. So I started, by the time I was in high school, I was having daily pain, and I just sort of bucked up and pushed through it, but it was still very difficult. So I took a yoga class as a spiritual seeker, and in the yoga class, I had relief of pain for about 10 minutes, and I said, well, if there's one thing that can do that, you know, morphine wasn't doing it, and one yoga class did it. So I said, well, there's definitely something here. I need to look into that. So shortly thereafter, I met my teacher, Yogi Bhajan, who asked me, while I was still a teenager, if I wanted to study Ayurveda with him, and in an apprenticeship kind of situation, and not having any idea what that really involved, I said, yeah, sure. And 32 years later, we were still at it. So I just found it to be fascinating, and needless to say, Ayurveda yoga and the whole natural healing approach healed my disease. I'm well past, as far as I know, I'm the oldest person that's ever survived with this disorder, and I have no signs of it now. It's all completely gone. But in the meantime, I just fell in love with Vedic sciences, Ayurveda yoga, and it just became my entire life. And I owe my life to it. It's what I do 100% of the time, and it's just it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I think that's how many of us feel when we discover Ayurveda, is we just fall in love, you know, it resonates something within us. And how lucky, though, that you were able to find it at such a young age, because back in the day, not many people knew about Ayurveda, right?
Oh, not at all. There were no books, no stores, no supplies, no nothing. You know, it was quite the challenge to study with my teacher at that time, because I could learn about things academically, but I couldn't put my hands on them. You know, I'd heard about this magical herb Ashwagandha for 10 years before I ever saw any. It was just, things were very different. There was no clicking the internet and getting something 2 days later from Asia, and it's very, very different now. But yes, it was a real slow go to learn these kinds of things. Plus, my teacher was a very traditional Asian teacher, and he taught, it was a long process of, first I did a lot of errands and swept a lot of floors, but on the other hand, he also was giving me things and kind of dribbling it out, and it was gradually all kind of coming together. So there was still a lot to do, even though we didn't have the texts or the supplies, but I became immersed in it. And, studying in that apprenticeship style is so very different from what we do now, because I was seeing my first client 2 hours after my first lesson with his supervision. I mean, it just got right into it. It was very hands-on right away. None of this years and years of studying before you get to actually see or do anything. But on the other hand, the glide path was pretty long. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's also interesting that, you were introduced to yoga first, because I think that's how a lot of people nowadays are finding out about Ayurveda, is from a yoga class and a little bit of Sanskrit and saying, oh, this is great, what more can I do? And then, they come upon Ayurveda as sister science to yoga.
Yeah, I think that's true. And my teacher taught a very broad spectrum lifestyle. So one of his favorite sayings was, parsley is as much a part of yoga as cobra pose. And, really he was teaching a whole Vedic lifestyle that included anything and everything having to do with that. And so, any class from him might as much likely be about herbs as a posture or meditation.
Yeah, beautiful. So how did you become to specialize in herbs? Because that really is your specialty. I don't know anyone who knows more about herbs than you do.
I can't say that it was really that intentional. My teacher definitely kind of pushed me in that direction. I was interested in it. I resonated with it, and just slowly over time it became more and more what I was all about. And, again, in that era, not very many people knew very much about anything. So I became the token guy. If you knew 10 herbs, you knew a lot. So I became kind of the token go-to guy at for a conference or a meeting or a paper or whatever. And once you kind of get into a box, it's hard to get out of that box. So then, I became not only the guy to go to, but the guy who had to be the guy that was in that box. And so, it wasn't really my intention originally, but I'm certainly glad that it happened. And I love all these aspects of Ayurveda, Vedic lifestyle, and certainly practice all of them. But I just, I got to wear the herbal hat, and it became the hat. So.
Yeah, and now you've been teaching so many people too, and we're all benefiting from your wisdom. So thank you for that.
Well, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, that's for sure. If our ancestors hadn't been working on this for 5,000 years, we wouldn't have what we have. But it's all due to the grace of their teaching.
Yeah, that's so good. So what role do herbs play in Ayurveda? Because it's obviously a very important part, but explain that to us.
Well, really, we're talking about healing substances and whatever you take in your body, and Ayurveda doesn't really make a distinction between medicine and food. The best food is the best medicine, the best medicine is the best food, and really it's just a matter of potency. So we think of oatmeal as a food, but we can use it as a medicine. We think of ashwagandha as a medicine, but you can put it in your food. So it's all part of the same spectrum. Herbs are very, very important. I would say if you went to the average at a typical session with an Ayurvedic physician who was Indian trained, it would be very rare that you'd leave that session without herbal suggestions of some kind. Herbal medicine in Ayurveda has kind of gotten a slow start here because most Ayurvedic teachers were concerned about the legal climate or how it would be accepted or whatever, but they started with diet and cooking and lifestyle and breathing and those kinds of things, and so herbal medicine is kind of playing catch up, but I think it is coming on strong now.
And now, just to compare a little bit with Western medicine, because Western medicine, or just typical Westerners, we think about we need to take our vitamins. That's kind of our herbs a replacement for vitamins in Ayurveda? Because there are some herbs that you would take daily, and there's some you would take for a cure or whatever. Are they
right.
instead of vitamins, or how does that work?
Yeah, and again, it's a huge spectrum. So there are certainly some that are very food-like. So I mentioned ashwagandha. It's the root of a tomato plant, basically, and it's just something that you can take every day. Just about anybody could take it. It's not going to hurt anybody or do any kind of create any kind of problem. Very, very food-like. So you use it on a very regular basis, just as part of your daily routine. And then there are some that are very, very specific and quite medicinal and very potent that you use like drugs. You could call them the drugs of Ayurveda. So in one sense, in the sense of being something that you use in a medicinal way, they're like vitamins. When someone takes 100 milligrams of zinc or 15 grams of vitamin C, they're not doing that to treat a deficiency. They're using that in a, if I could say this way, a drug-like way to treat a condition. But if they're taking a couple pills of multiple vitamin every day, they're just taking it to make up for deficiency and to use for nutritional insurance. So both kinds of things are in Ayurveda. The actual vitamin content of most herbs is not very significant. So you don't take ashwagandha root to get amounts of B vitamins or whatever in there. That would come from food. Opinions differ about whether we should use vitamins in the modern world. There are definitely some Ayurvedic fundamentalists who just say, look, Ayurveda didn't have vitamins 5,000 years ago. You didn't need them then. You don't need them now. And there are others that say, well, but our diet has changed, our food has changed, our environment has changed, and we need that extra support now. So they're available if you want to use them. And, so it just kind of depends on your perspective.
I see. Okay. So how does Ayurveda, the herbalism part of Ayurveda, how does it compare with other modalities of healing? For example, like Chinese medicine. People ask me that all the time. What's the difference between Ayurveda and Chinese medicine?
Well, the answer to that is not much. They both come from the same root, very, very obviously. If you learn one, it's very easy to learn another. There's a different language, a little bit of different kind of cosmology. The Ayurveda materia medica, the pharmacopoeia, is about 1/3 overlapping. So there are many things, the two systems butt up against each other, and so there's a lot of the herbs will grow on either side of the Himalayas or that whole area. So there's a lot of herbs in common, but the basic principles, they both have 5 elements and 3 humors, and they both, the energetic systems are identical, wet or dry, hot or cold, that kind of thing. So other than those just little language differences, and then there are some kind of cultural differences that people make a lot out of, but they're a minimum part of the whole issue. Like Ayurveda, generally speaking, loves to use milk products. Ayurveda is not as saturated in milk products as people often think, but it is the land of the cow, and they use ghee and yogurt and like that. And in China, mammal milk's never caught on, and in fact, there was sort of a cultural stigma about using them. So there's Chinese people don't love the idea of consuming milk products anyway. They're sort of a non-food culturally. And so there's this. So they just say don't use them, and Ayurveda says, well, they're very valuable, and we can use them under the right circumstances. So there are a few things like that that are definitely distinctive. Ayurveda likes oil a lot. Chinese medicine doesn't like oil that much, but they both use it, and it's just a matter of emphasis. So really, they're 90% identical when you skim the surface.
Yeah, and also I think a difference is soy too, because in Chinese medicine soy is good. I think in the whole Chinese and Japanese culture they have a lot of tofu and things like that. And what does Ayurveda say about soy?
Really, Ayurveda is pretty silent about soy in the historically. Soybeans weren't part of the Indian culture. They're not in the books. They're not about, nobody talks about them. So people have to try to figure out what is how to use them today and if it's appropriate. And some people who are very traditional just say, look, it's not part of our system. Other people say, well, we can use the logic and understanding that we know about Ayurveda to figure out whether it's going to be good. So soy products, generally speaking, are cold, wet, and heavy and difficult to digest, but not a whole lot more so than milk. And there's opinions all the way from soy is absolutely a non-food all the way up to it's perfectly fine if used properly. And the thing about Ayurveda is that there's no diet or there's no medicine. We say in Ayurveda that every medicine is good for somebody, but no medicine is good for everybody. And so there will be people who tolerate soy just fine, and there are people who don't tolerate it well. You have a person with high vata, their digestive tract is insufficient. They eat, heavy, wet protein, and they don't digest it well, and it ends up with gas, which, as we know, is the #1 vata problem. So it's not suitable for them. But a person with high pitta in their gut might be able to just burn it right up and never know the difference.
Right. There you go. Yeah, we're starting to get some questions in from people, too. So Michelle's saying that she's a Kapha Vata, and she's wondering if there's anything she can take herbal-wise to help her with her sugar cravings. She's craving sugar.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if she means her current dosha state or constitution. I'm sure she means constitution. So the sugar craving is ubiquitous in our culture. It's not limited to any one constitution, that's for sure. Vata people tend to be the most likely to want to go for sugar because it gets some instant energy without any digestion. So there's an herb in Ayurveda called Gurmar, G-U-R-M-A-R. Scientific name is Gymnema sylvestre. Gurmar means the killer of sweet, and it specifically is designed to kill sweet cravings, and it's probably the best blood sugar lowering herb in the world. So you can use it and see if it helps your sugar cravings. You would take about 1 gram to start. Do that for maybe 2-3 days, and then a couple grams for 2-3 days, divided doses throughout the day, and see how it goes. Now, sometimes people with sugar cravings have low blood sugar, and this herb pushes down blood sugar, so you have to, just watch that. But that would be a really great one to try. Otherwise, long-acting, sustaining energizers like ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is not going to stop a sugar craving the moment you have it. You're looking at the chocolate cake and you take some ashwagandha. That's not the time. But you take it consistently every single day over weeks, and you will find that your sugar craving is diminishing.
Yeah. Now, ashwagandha is one of the primary herbs in Ayurveda. Can you explain to us some of the benefits of it and how we should take it, things like that?
Yeah, sure. It's probably one of the 5 top most used herbs in Ayurveda. It's the #1 tonic for men. So that's not to say that women can't take it, but it's typically more advised for men. So men often start taking ashwagandha at puberty and take it forever thereafter. For the next 72 years, they can take a gram or 2 of ashwagandha every day. It's a little bit drying, a little bit warming, not very much either way. It's basically neutral, and it helps to increase muscle building, stamina, sexual functioning, energy like that, and it helps you to regulate your sleep. It doesn't make you sleepy when you take it, but when you take it consistently over time, you find yourself able to fall asleep at bedtime, stay asleep all night, and awaken refreshed. It's a major anti-vata herb in Ayurveda, so it helps the brain in almost every Ayurvedic brain combination. And it's just superb for anxiety, which we know is a main symptom of vata. So even though it's mainly a man's herb in Ayurveda, it is fine for women to take it. My practice for 44 years has been 95% women. So in 44 years, I've given ashwagandha to 2 men, 2 only, for anxiety. Because, #1, men don't come in for help. As part of being a man in America, you don't ask for help. And then, so 95% have been women, and then men also typically don't have as much anxiety. So women, but mainly I've given it to women. You take about 15 grams a day of ashwagandha. In about 2 weeks, it's like, who, me, anxiety? I never had anxiety. What are you talking about? I mean, it just erases it like it never happened. It's beautiful. It can replace your Valium. Now, Valium takes 15 minutes to work. Ashwagandha takes 15 days, but it just prevents it, erases it, and then over time you find yourself just not having it because it's rebuilding your nervous system.
So what would be the best way to take it, like in a capsule, or there's companies that make it, but how do you know which is the best one to get?
Yeah, 90% of Ayurvedic medicines are taken as powder, and they're usually mixed powder in formulas. I mean, grandma will give you a single herb, in your soup or something, but the more formal kind of practice, usually you have several herbs in a formula. Either it'll be a formula that's a classical formula that's known and you can buy from the pharmacy, or your doctor will put together an individualized formula. It's usually powder, and you stir it into something mushy and swallow it. So depending on which dosha you're treating, that could be warm milk or ghee or honey, something like that. Now, in modern times, we have capsules, so it's perfectly fine to use capsules. Traditional Ayurveda would say that we would like you to taste the medicine that you're swallowing, because taste is a big part of it, and I completely agree with that, but most of these don't taste good. And what I've discovered over all this time doing it is that the herb that sits on the shelf and doesn't work as well as the one you actually swallow. So I'm pretty much willing for people to get whatever, to do whatever they need to do to get it in. And if they just find the taste to be repugnant, then doctor it up any way you want or take capsules or whatever. It's still going to work inside you.
Yeah, you have to have the compliance. So yeah, because I know that some herbs I could try as teas, but I'm like, oh no. But that's another way to get a herb, right, as a tea?
Oh, some herbs absolutely are used in tea. Brahmi or Gotu Kola, for example, is an herb that works great as tea. Tea is really good for herbs that have water-soluble constituents and which you have to use a large dose. So ashwagandha would be, Gotu Kola would be a good choice. Ashwagandha, which we were just talking about, the active ingredients are not very soluble in water, so we typically don't use it as tea, just because people found out 2,000 years ago that it doesn't work very well as tea, and they just wrote it in the scriptures. This is one that's better to take as powder, get the whole thing in, because you don't extract the active ingredients very well as tea. And there's some detail involved here to discuss these things, and you have to know each herb at least well enough to to get some success. Grandma normally knows enough about these things. I mean, her grandmother would have told her, and her grandmother would have told her to stir ashwagandha into warm milk when you give it, rather than trying to take it as tea and just gobble down the powder, right along with the warm milk. So it's been time tested with these things, and you just stick with what works.
Yeah, yeah. So we have more questions coming in, and you guys be patient because I do want to get to all of your questions. Yesterday we were talking with Lakshmi Devi about massage oils, and it came up about herbalized massage oils. So I was wondering about the benefits of getting herbs transdermally that way.
Yeah, these herbally infused massage oils are the epitome of Ayurvedic pharmacology. That's just the most sophisticated essence of all Ayurvedic preparations. Ayurvedic preparations tend to be low-tech but high concept. So you've got a guy standing there with a 500-gallon tank of oil with herbs in it, stirring it with a big paddle for days at a time. And that formula has been worked out very, very specifically so that the herbs are being cooked for the right time in the right way in the right oil, and just make these magnificent products, very time and labor intensive. Some of these processes go on for months, and you soak it and then recook it and soak it again, and it just goes on and on and on. But it makes beautiful emerald green or deep red or flavorful, beautiful aroma kinds of things. And they're all designed to treat a particular kind of tissue, a particular dosha. So the herbs are going in transdermally. Vata dosha is the main dosha that we treat with oil. So in Ayurveda, we would like to just marinate you in oil any possible way that we could. If we could soak you in a tank of hot oil, we would do it. So oil goes in, your ear, your eye, up your nose. You gargle with oil enemas, oil massage. It's just, scalp massage, everything with oil. And these beautiful infused oils, there's hundreds of them. And so you might use one for epilepsy and another for MS and another for osteoarthritis, and it just goes on and on. But they're just beautiful, and they work very, very well. That's the beautiful thing about now getting to this place where the world is such a small place that we can just, click on a website, and that oil will be on our doorstep tomorrow, and we can use all these hundreds of beautiful remedies in a way that just we never could before. The whole thing is opening up to us. It's really something.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And you guys on the line will start doing your questions. I just want to remind you that we're talking with KP Khalsa. And KP, you have a website where people can go visit you too. Is it your name?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just kpkhalsa.com. Go right there. It'll be fine.
Khalsa.com. And if you're interested in the Ayurveda experience, which is our e-course about Ayurveda, which we filmed in India, which amazing, the birthplace of Ayurveda, where it all began. And it's 7.5 hours worth of video content. Absolutely beautiful. And we're offering it to anybody on the webinar now for a very good deal. So we're going to put the link up in the chat box, so stay tuned for that. And when the link comes, definitely click on that. So KP, you said there was like 5 major herbs. Ashwagandha is one of them. What's another one of them?
Another one we could talk about is Shatavari, which is sort of the woman's equivalent to Ayurveda. So Shatavari is the root of a type of asparagus, a close cousin to the asparagus that we eat the stem. In this case, we use the root. So it's a little bit moistening, a little bit cooling, and suitable for women. And so it's a very general hormone balancer. Women start taking it at puberty, and again, could take a modest dose every single day forever. Many of these herbs in higher doses will treat symptoms. So Shatavari will treat hot flashes, for example. So Ayurveda maintains that you shouldn't have hot flashes. If you've taken care of yourself, menopause should be easy. It's going to be different. You won't feel the same. You'll feel different, but it shouldn't be pathological. But, of course, what happens in our culture is people live on donuts and coffee until they're 50 years old, then all of a sudden they crash off the cliff with the menopause, and then they come to people like us and want the non-drug drug that acts like a drug that will, flip their hot flashes off like a switch. Shatavari is the closest thing we have to that. So if you use maybe something like 15 grams of Shatavari, let's say a woman is having hot flashes, 10, 15 hot flashes a day, and you give her 15 grams of Shatavari tomorrow, she can have 0 hot flashes tomorrow. That's how quickly it works. But then, of course, she has to continue taking that high dose. But if she'd been taking a couple grams a day since puberty, she wouldn't have the hot flashes to begin with. So shatavari
Exactly.
is a very general female balancer, and then it has some other uses. We use it for bladder infections, and you just sort of numerous other things, but a very, very famous herb. Those are the two most famous ones, one for men, one for women. So at the least you could start with those.
Yeah, and I can absolutely vouch for that because I've been through menopause and never had a hot flash. And a lot of it I thought is because I'm a Vata. Pitta women probably have more hot flashes. I don't know if that's true, but
Oh, absolutely
yeah,
true. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
yeah. So, and
Well,
I
listen, I'm
started,
surprised. I'm
yeah,
surprised you went through menopause at 25.
That's really sweet. I actually started taking Ayurvedic herbs probably when I was about 30, because that's when I basically got into Ayurveda. So when I was about 30, I'd start taking them, and I never had a problem with menopause or hot flashes or anything. And I was
Beautiful.
taking herbal blends from one of the Ayurvedic companies that make a blend for women. So I was taking
Yeah.
that all along, and I just never had a problem. And I know
Beautiful.
shatavari was one of the herbs in the
Yeah,
blend.
beautiful. That's what we want. That's how it's supposed to work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay, so ashwagandha, shatavari. What's the third one?
Oh, another great one would be Triphala, which is the most famous Ayurvedic herb. And Triphala is three little wrinkly fig-like fruits that grow in the foothills of the Himalayas. They're dried. They all taste horrible. They're dried and mixed together in equal proportions, and that makes them tridoshic, so anybody can take them. Triphala does the most things for the most people, for the most organs of any herb in all of Ayurveda, and we use it for everything. You can make tea out of it, and then you can put that tea in your neti pot. You make it into a ghee, the herbal infused ghee like we talked about. You can use that for massage or up your nose, body work of whatever kind. You can use it for massage in massage oil. It's just every orifice, every use, every organ, every way. Now the thing about Triphala is that it's an herb that does something for everybody, but it's not the best herb for anything. And this is true for these jack of all trades herbs that do 1,000 things, but for all those 1,000 things, you could find another better herb. But for something to take every day consistently in modest amounts forever, Triphala is perfect, and that can be taken by men or women. So you'd add that to your male or female tonic. So it's tridoshic, and it's very rejuvenating over a very extended period of time. It works slowly. It's a mild herbal remedy, but just the basis of everything. It's in about 90% of Ayurvedic formulas.
And I can vouch for that too because I take triplet every single day, and it cured my IBS. I used to have terrible IBS. Well, as a Vata, I mean, that's a very common complaint, I guess, for Vatas, but it totally cured me of it. And I just take it every day. It's no big deal, and I'm doing great, So it's really nice. Okay, so ashwagandha, shatavari, triphala. What's number 4?
Well, another great herb that we could talk about is the one I mentioned earlier, Brahmi or Gotu Kola, which has two stupendous uses. Probably the best herb in the world for the brain and nerves. And so it treats cognition, but it also treats the nerves in terms of just the tissue themselves. So crushing injuries to the nerves, any kind of diseases of the nerves like MS, anything like that, mental functioning, epilepsy, all that. That's one use. And the other use is connective tissue, which is a use that's less well known here, but very well known in Asia. So it treats corrupt connective tissue, which is the whole thing that your body is made out of. So psoriasis, eczema, that sort of thing. It was very famous for leprosy, which we don't have now, but very, very serious skin and muscle kinds of issues. Scars. It will help to prevent scarring and help the body gobble up old scars. Just so many things. Those two uses, and that's a really mild herb, so you have to use high doses to get very much action. So if you're treating, let's say, psoriasis with Brahmi, probably 30 grams would be a minimum dose, and you would make that into tea and then slug that down. Fortunately, it doesn't taste too bad, so you can tolerate drinking it. Maybe even 60 grams. So it's a flimsy salad vegetable like parsley or spinach, compared to some of these other ones that are much more targeted and and potent. So if you get the dose in, it's just astounding what it can do for the skin and the brain.
Wow. And since it affects the that is for.
I think you asked me a question, but the reception was chunky.
Sorry. So can it be used to help ADD, attention deficit disorder?
Yeah, very much so. And in fact, there's some real nice scientific studies for that. If you go to the scientific literature, you'll find 2, 3, 4 big, really well done, nice studies on ADD with kids. Gotu Kola is a slow-acting herb, and again, that's kind of the problem, is that the teacher wants little Johnny to be made better in a week. And you're talking many weeks or months with Gotu Kola like that. But if you take it long enough, and the main thing is high enough doses. People take a half a gram for 3 days. It doesn't do anything, and they just give up. It's again, it's a mild herb, so high enough doses to do the job. It'll treat adult ADD, helps with mood and concentration, all of that.
Right. And what about since it's also for the brain, would it be helpful in dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that?
Well, probably. I mean, Ayurveda would definitely say that it would be used for dementia. I don't know that we have much research with that. The scriptures say that, and I certainly would deal with it. In my generation of practitioners, we haven't treated very much Alzheimer's because the generation that are elders now and are starting to, transition to the baby boomers, but the previous generation wasn't interested in this sort of thing. So I've treated very little dementia. I mean, I sort of know the science and I know the official Ayurvedic position, but I have very little experience with actual demented people. That's changing very rapidly, though, because the baby boomers are now getting into that age, and they're a lot more interested in these ideas. And, they were, the people that are my same age, my same generation, but when I was learning to do all this kind of stuff, they were getting a job in a factory, and now they've retired, and they watch Dr. Oz, and so they are interested, in these things. So while the adventurous hippies were figuring out all this stuff, these other folks were living conventional lives, eating peanut butter sandwiches and taking, blood pressure medication, and now they're developing memory loss, and they want it to be treated. The baby boomers feel very entitled that they should never have a symptom, a disease, any kind of a problem, and they'll just keep pushing until they get to that place. And so, we're going to have a chance to do a lot more with elders now in this generation and actually validate these things that, in the past we just couldn't find people who were open to it.
Right. Good point. Okay, so we're going to do one more herb, and then we'll get to your questions because we have so many questions. This is amazing. Okay, so what's the 5th herb?
Let's talk about my favorite herb, turmeric. I'm known in the herb world as Haldi Baba, which means honored Sir Turmeric, basically. Haldi is turmeric, and Baba. So it's just my favorite herb. I really resonated with it from the moment I began to work with it. I've written about it many, many times, but it just reminded me, because we were talking about dementia. India has an Alzheimer's rate 1/8 that of America, 1/8. And one of the main reasons, apparently, so the scientists say, is because of the consumption of turmeric. So the average Indian person eats about 1 gram of turmeric a day in their food, but they eat it from childhood, and they eat it every day consistently. And so the yellow pigment in there, curcumin, is the most studied substance on planet Earth right now. There are more studies on turmeric, about 12,000 studies in the scientific literature on turmeric. I just happened to look it up this year, so we're in October, and there have been about 600 studies already just this year on turmeric, on curcumin. So many things. Turmeric is, beneficial for the immune system, for cancer. It's a detoxifying herb, but largely it's known as an anti-inflammatory, and we're now realizing that that's what causes the brain damage of Alzheimer's. And so if we can push that inflammation down, turmeric is the #1 most promising thing, including all drugs and herbs, to treat Alzheimer's. And so far the studies look really good. We haven't gotten to the place of human studies very much yet. We're just right on the brink of that, but that looks extremely promising.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of different ways to take that, because you can cook with it, but will you get enough of it if you just cook with it, or should you, like I happen to have turmeric capsules here, should you take it capsules to make sure you get enough? And the other thing is, can you overdose on it? Can you take too much?
You certainly can't cook with turmeric, and the gram or 2 a day that the average Indian person uses over 70 years shows incredible potential for treating so many different kinds of things, or preventing them. But it's not enough to treat those things if you have already developed them, so you have to use much higher doses. So let's say that you're out playing softball on the weekend and you twist your knee and you come back and by evening it's swelled up like a cantaloupe and you can't walk on it. You could take, let's say, 4 tablespoons of turmeric, just stir it into a glass of water and drink it down, and you'll wake up in the morning with that knee, the swelling gone way down and the pain greatly diminished. So higher doses for some of these things, and you certainly could use capsules. You could take that same amount in capsules. It would just be tedious to swallow all of them. Turmeric doesn't taste that great, but you could swallow, you could turn it into water, plug your nose, and knock it back, or a little yogurt or whatever you want to do. So, as a maintenance remedy, several major medical organizations like the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston is recommending that every American just now, based on the science, take turmeric every single day like people do in India. It's got so many beneficial things. And so just a couple tablets there would be adequate, for that if you took it for the next 50 years. A lot of people find that it's kind of, to treat something like, let's say, ulcerative colitis, which is something that we use it for, the dose is high enough that it would be hard to swallow that many capsules for most people. It would work, but it's just a question of their preference.
Okay, got it. All right, here we go, people. Let's name the 5 because people are saying, oh, which was for that, which was for that. So first we talked about ashwagandha, right, which is mainly for men, but also for anxiety, which is good. Shatavari, which is mostly for women. But how else would we use it?
Well, it's slimy and cooling, and it has an affinity for the pelvic region, so we use it to cool down inflamed bladder infections for that. For example, it's used for prostate disease in men where the prostate has become inflamed. It's slimy, so it lubricates the gut, so you could use it for heartburn and colitis, any kind of inflamed gut kind of thing. So there's many uses for it.
Okay, good. And then we talked about Triphala. We're seeing how good my memory is now to name all 5. Then we talked about Triphala, which is a good overall digestive tonic, right?
Yep.
And we talked about Brahmi, which is great for the brain. Is that right?
Yep.
Gotu Kola, Brahmi, great for the brain.
Right. Yep.
And then turmeric, which is what makes curry yellow, and that's great for inflammation. So that's just a little recap for you guys who are asking for that. We have one question here. What herb is good to boost fertility?
Oh, boy. I was just talking about, I was teaching at medical school this morning, and this was our topic, so I'm just immersed in this. The go-to herb for fertility in Ayurveda is aloe vera, and we use the gel in this case because we want to use a high dose, and the skin is laxative. So if you use the skin, you can't take a high dose. It'll produce loose stool. So they open up the leaf, scoop out the inside, and you have this jelly kind of material in there, and that's the stuff. And you can take pretty much an unlimited dose of that. It's a little bit slimy, so there's a limit because it will eventually make your stool slimy enough that you'll have, loose stool. But most women can get up to a pint a day, no problem. I was just telling the medical students this morning that I've had 35 babies born to my practice from infertile women. And what happens? Yeah, isn't that great? So, it's been taking 44 years to get to that number, but, about 1 a year. So what happens is they come to my practice. They've had every possible test you could imagine. They've gone to the medical school. Everything is good. Nobody can figure out what to do. And finally, they want to do in vitro fertilization or something like that, tens of thousands of dollars involving various drugs. Well, I don't know what else to do. They've been checked out by the best of the best, and they can't find out what to do. So I go with the go-to remedy, which is the aloe vera, and this is just so well known in Ayurveda. There are many, many fertility remedies based on Ayurveda, but I usually just have women get really good quality aloe vera and drink up to a pint a day. It's a little on the expensive side, so sometimes the money starts to even just become the problem, but compared to fertility treatments, it's nothing. And see what happens. And many, many times, the first or second cycle, they ovulate pregnant Bing, and just it's amazing. Now, how does that work? I don't know. Aloe vera has a whole bunch of weird phytochemicals in it, so I'm not sure of the what the constituents are, but it's pretty reliable for fertility.
Well, that's great. And now that this audience member got that advice, we might have another baby that you're credited for. Good job.
Right. Well, let me know. I'll add it to the check marks on the wall.
There you go. What herb is good to boost the immune system?
There's an Ayurvedic herb called Guduchi. I'll spell it Guduchi, and that's one of the most well-known herbs for the immune system in Ayurveda. It grows all over India. It's very well known. All the parts are. It's a climbing vine, so it's grown on posts or trellises in the plantation where people grow it, and it's a very famous folk medicine. One of the things that my teacher did to teach me things and teach me lessons was to send me on fruitless searches for things. It's a very common thing that Asian teachers do to kind of get you in the mood. So I remember one of the first fruitless searches. It wasn't intended to be fruitless. He actually wanted some of this stuff, but he sent me on a worldwide search for Guduchi. I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know where to get it. You couldn't call up India, and get it. But anyway, what the purpose was, it got me to be. It made a big impression on me. I still remember this today. He said, that herb that Indian grandmothers, everybody plants it outside their house so that if their kid has the flu, the Indian grandmother can go grab it. So little Johnny comes down. He's feverish and got a snotty nose and he's tired, and Grandma, my neck hurts. She goes out to the Guduchi bush, grabs a hunk of the leaves, brings it in, cooks it up, and in 20 minutes he's drinking bitter herb that suppresses his fever, increases his immune function, makes him sweat so that he'll sweat out the flu, and he's feeling better in half an hour. So you can use it in high doses for acute flu, but also modest doses, like let's say 5 grams a day. Let's say that you have just kind of a weak immune system that doesn't do well, and you have frequent cold or flu, let's say, and you take 5 grams a day for a year. You wouldn't have to do it forever. Although we were just talking about mind herbs before, and Guduchi is one of the most famous herbs. There's a legend in Vedic tales about when the god of the universe, Indra, had the nectar of the universe in a cup, in a chalice. He was fighting some demons, and it was hard to hold the cup balanced, so he dropped a few drops, and every place that a drop dropped, a Guduchi bush grew up. But that just tells you how, it came from God's drinking nectar, right? So anyway, it's a very famous herb, and it does so many things, but one of the things that it does is that it's considered to be the best detoxifying herb in Ayurveda for the mind. And we don't normally think of our mind as something that needs to be detoxified. But I don't know about you, but my mind is full of all kinds of stuff from who knows where and how it got in there, right? So the subconscious is just stuffed with anything and everything, So Guduchi actually works on that energetic basis to help to detoxify your mind. And so you've got something that will treat little Johnny's flu in the morning, or one of the most stupendous aids to meditation, detoxifying your mind in all of Ayurveda. So Guduchi, well worth learning about.
Awesome. Yeah, and I heard about it recently because a friend of mine has Lyme disease, and that was recommended by an Ayurvedic physician, Guduchi, for Lyme disease. So it can be very powerful. Okay, great. So someone else wants to know, what would be a good herb to help boost energy?
This is a little bit of a controversial topic in Ayurveda, which is why I'm kind of hesitating, because traditionally Ayurveda doesn't believe in treating symptoms. It's not that we won't do it, and we're kind of stuck doing it here because everybody waits till they're busted before they come to, to see you. But Ayurveda is kind of resistant to giving sort of the magic pill that makes you more energized, because the problem is that then you just go on living on donuts and coffee, and instead of fixing yourself, and so you just use the magic pill. So it's kind of hard to put my finger on one. The Indian continent didn't have any sources of caffeine until the British brought tea. So there, certainly there is tea now and coffee and whatever in India, but it wasn't, people weren't used to drinking stimulating things. So when Ayurveda thinks about energy, it usually talks about things that enhance circulation, warming remedies that promote digestion so that you digest nutrients from your food, that as nutrients circulate throughout your body. They're warming circulation enhancers. So we could call them circulation enhancers or energy enhancers, and that would be things like ginger, black pepper, things like that. I know that sounds like those are herbs you put on your potatoes, not something that will be serious medicine, but in high doses they can really be very serious. I'll percolate this question a little bit and see if I can come up with anything better. We mentioned the ashwagandha. If you take that consistently over time, it slowly boosts your stamina, and people just notice huge differences. I talk to people who maybe took a class 5 years ago, and I meet them in the grocery store, and they say, "Oh, I started that ashwagandha 5 years ago, and I can't believe how much energy I have now." but it's a little on the slow side compared to some of the herbs in, let's say, Western herbalism. I'll think about that a little more as we're talking.
But that's a really good answer too, because I think, whatever your dosha is, you could be feeling a lack of energy or fatigue or something, and it may just be you need to balance in other ways too.
Right.
Like it could be the foods you eat. So, okay, so here's another one. She says that her stomach bloats after she eats dinner. Is there an urge to help that bloating after you eat?
Yeah, there's a very famous digestive combination in Ayurveda called Trikatu, which means the three pungents. And those three herbs are dry ginger, with which we're very familiar, black pepper, and an herb called long pepper, which is closely related to black pepper. Those three herbs have complementary energetics, and so when you use them together, just about anybody can take them as a mildly warming digestive spice that heats up your digestive fire, reduces gas. So Trikatu, the three pungents, and you would just take a little bit. You can take it in capsules or stir it into your food, and you would take, let's say, a gram with the first meal, see how that goes. If that's comfortable, the next day take a couple grams with your meal and just work your way up until you found the maximum dose that either didn't make you too warm in the tummy or that stopped your bloating. And it's one of my favorite digestive aids. That also is in about 90% of Ayurvedic formulas, and those herbs are very, very famous. Black pepper is, it's hard for Americans to believe how much respect it gets in Ayurveda, but it's considered to be literally the best tissue cleansing herb in all of Ayurveda, the best blood purifier, and it's, we're used to putting it on, just sprinkling it on our food a little bit, but when you get the high doses, it increases circulation, of course, the digestive fire, as we said, the detox action of it, it's drying diuretic, so it helps with water retention, many, many, many things. It's a very, very respected herb in Ayurveda, and as I said, it's in about 90% of Ayurvedic formulas.
Yeah. So, all of these herbs sound so good. I could see where it would be tempting to just like start popping herbs and everything. Are there interactions? How many should we take at a time? For how long? How does that all work?
Well, the answer to how many we should take at a time is probably a lot more than you think, because we come from a medicine-oriented culture, and people look at their little blue Valium, and then they look at their giant handful of Ayurvedic stuff, and they say, well, if that was Valium, it would kill me, and it's hard to to understand that difference. But it's not at all uncommon to take many tablespoons of herbs a day. I was at doing an advanced workshop at an Ayurvedic conference the other day. And this was sort of like clinical skills for experienced clinicians, and it was about half Indian doctors and about half American-trained practitioners. And as they came in, they kind of naturally segregated, and you had all the Americans on one side and all the Indians on the other side. And I was talking away as I do. Now, remember, I was trained by a traditional Ayurvedic practitioner, from India, so he trained me to do it the way that they do in India. I was talking about these doses and uses of these a little bit more obscure herbs. And the Indian side was muttering. And then finally one doc stood up and said, thank you so much for presenting the real doses about these things. Like, we're despairing that we'd ever be able to really use the proper doses of these things because Americans are so worried about these things. And, of course, the American practitioners on the other side were horrified because they're used to, tiny doses out of sort of fear in our culture that somehow there's going to be some problem with these things. But there are some potential interactions, but they're pretty minimal. Nothing that's likely to hurt you, but they might be incompatible in terms of from an energy perspective. So you're trying to warm up someone's tummy so that they have better digestion, less gas, that kind of thing, and then you put a bunch of cold herbs in there at the same time. You just offset the action you're trying to create. So you have to use some intelligence in putting it together, and that's why even taking a short course in some kind of basics would give you that, or talk to grandma. Grandma learns all those rules in the Indian household, and she learned it from her grandma. Our grandmas didn't teach us those things. So the things we're talking about, not much of a problem, not much of an issue in terms of dose, and it's pretty much mix and match for most of these.
Yeah. But I could see where it would be a good idea to consult an Ayurvedic practitioner and get, specific herbs and specific doses so that you're not just like throwing stuff at the problem, right?
Well, right. And that, again, the American expectation is that you can sort of do anything to bust your body, and then there's going to be a magic pill that will fix you. And that worked for a long time until you're 70, and now you're at the end of the road, and no pill is fixing it. Now you're stuck, and now we have a whole huge rebuilding thing to do. So Ayurveda isn't about that. So Ayurveda is all about prevention. That's the main focus of Ayurveda. Not that we can't treat symptoms, and we have to, but the emphasis is is prevention. So sure, even just going to a practitioner for 1 or 2 sessions to sort of get grounded in what a good long-term treatment would be, and as you say, doses of these kinds of things. Just basic differences like, are the herbs hot or cold or wet or dry, so that you can match your physiology. And you could get suggestions for things to do for, let's say, 6 months at a time or something, and then come back and get a follow-up recheck and make some adjustments, and that would be a really good, slow way. You don't have to be sick. I know this just sounds radical, but you don't have to be sick to actually come and see a practitioner and help you stay healthy.
I agree. Ayurveda is a great preventive medicine. It's fantastic. And we do talk about herbs quite a bit in the Ayurveda experience. And you guys, since you're on the webinar today, we've got a great price for you. And we're going to have the link up in the chat box. So make sure you click on that link, because it's only for people on this webinar. So thanks for being here. And that's our gift for you, is this deep discount. It's an amazing course, and it's perfect for people like me who love Ayurveda, and we wanted to learn everything about Ayurveda, but we don't necessarily want to be a doctor. We want to use it for ourselves and our families and live the Ayurvedic lifestyle. So that's what makes it, I think, a really good course. Is it fills that need. It's more than just trying to read a book and figure it out on your own. You've got a real teacher there. You've got visuals and everything. But you don't have to go to an Ayurvedic school and get your doctoral degree. So it fits that need. So KP, when we're taking these herbs, should we be rotating the herbs that we take, or can we just find a plan and stick to it?
Good question. But first, before I answer that, let me just say I've seen the introductory videos for your Ayurveda experience, and I haven't seen the whole thing. But if it's you put it together, I know it's going to be great. So I really encourage people to check it out. And people in India sit around talking about these things around the dinner table, like we would talk about baseball scores. Grandma will say, "It's getting cold. I think we should switch to our winter diet." And Uncle G will say, "No, I think the weather is going to stay warm for another week. We should wait for another week." And I can't tell you how many conversations about bowel movements I've had over dinner with Indian families. And it's a whole different, mentality about this. But people discuss it, and they just say, "Grandma G, what should I be taking for my tummy ache or my menstrual cramps or my headache?" And Grandma knows just enough to be able to handle like 90% of those little problems that people have. And so anything from some personal knowledge to grandma knowledge to, you could see the clan herbalist who knows more than grandma, and they make their living doing it, but they're not academically trained. So in India, Ayurvedic physicians only treat about maybe 5% or 2% of the problems that people have, because grandma is taking care of the 90%. So really, we don't want to minimize this kind of folk knowledge. Just knowing how to take turmeric or ginger or guduchi, these kinds of things that can't hurt you, go really, really a long way. And that's the main thing that we're missing in our culture. Well, no, for most things you don't have to rotate them, and that idea comes from our drug-oriented mindset. So that the first time you drank coffee, the half a cup plastered you to the ceiling, and now you can drink 8 cups in a row and hardly feel it. So you develop the tolerance, right? And that's this idea that we're concerned that we're going to develop a tolerance, a resistance to ashwagandha or Triphala or whatever it is. But really, these things are food. So we never ask this question, do we have to rotate carrots or potatoes? I never ever heard the idea that somehow you have to have some time on and some time off with Ayurvedic herbs. They are often recommended in the scriptures just to take this every single day, and very often it'll have some very kind of fanciful thing, like if you want the strength of a lion, take 4 grams of this every day for 5 years, or that kind of thing. But really, they just really do not emphasize this idea that somehow you're going to become conditioned to them and you have to take a break.
Right, good. Okay, so another person is asking, is there any herbal remedy for arthritis? Would that be an inflammation thing?
Sure. Arthritis, it depends on whether it's hot arthritis, rheumatoid or lupus, that kind of thing, or cold arthritis. osteo. So most people as they age develop this osteotype arthritis, and that's a vata condition, and so we want to warm, moisten, and stabilize their tissues. So ginger is a stupendous remedy for osteoarthritis. It has an affinity for the joints. That is, when you take it, it's drawn to the joints so that it helps to warm up the joints and bring circulation and nutrients there. We would like to use oil with those people, so that could be oil externally, like we were talking about. There's a very famous oil, one of those infused oils called Narayan oil. Narayan is the god of prosperity in Indian thinking, and I don't know how the oil got named for him, but I call it the Bengay of Ayurveda. People know what Bengay is. It's every grandma knows about it, and every Indian household has a bottle of Narayan oil, and she puts it on her lumbago every day on her arthritic elbow. But over time, it makes a really big difference. It's quite effective for that. So you take ginger internally, apply Narayan oil externally. Make sure your food has enough oil in it. That would be a very good start for osteoarthritis.
Okay, good, very good. Here's another question. What herbs are good when your hair is falling out? Is there anything to prevent loss of hair?
Yeah, and this is a great example of just explaining the Ayurvedic approach to things, because Ayurveda doesn't treat the symptom of hair loss. It tries to figure out why your body is losing your hair. So most of the time when people have hair loss, it's because of high pitta in the head. Pitta is heat. Heat tends to rise. When it gets uncontrolled, you'll be hotter in the upper part of your body, and you literally just cook your scalp to death, and your hair starts to become sick and then gray and then falling out. So male pattern baldness is a constitutional pitta characteristic, and so we want to cool down the excess pitta, and we want to control it and keep it in the digestive tract where it belongs, not let it burst out or rage all around the body and then blast up to the top because it's hot and it rises. So cooling liver herbs like dandelion are good. Now, dandelion does not specifically treat hair loss. It reduces pitta and detoxifies the liver so that pitta stays where it's supposed to be in the liver and doesn't escape and swirl around. There is one herb very specifically, though, that Ayurveda relies on. That's an herb called bringraj, that is a cooling liver herb that treats pitta, and it's the #1 herb for the hair. So you can take it internally. The dose is about, let's say, up to 10 grams, and then there are external preparations that you can use, shampoos and oils and things that do work, but they take a long, long time. You have to be really diligent. You're talking about rubbing bringraj oil into your scalp every day for 2-3 years, and you start to see some sprouting after a year and some serious growth after 2 years, and 3, 4, 5 years, it is actually growing your hair back. The average person is not very willing to do that. Americans will pay anything, but pay any amount for something to treat their hair, but it's got to work in a day.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to apply it for they do it for a month and then say, I guess this isn't working. A month is not even a start for bringraj in the body. So internally is probably the way to go, but a cooling pitta herb with this affinity for the hair, and that's what everybody, that would be the go-to herb in Ayurveda for hair loss.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, we have time for one more question. Margaret's asking, what about probiotics? Are there any use of probiotics in Ayurveda or anything similar to probiotics?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Ayurveda is all over using the dairy products, and they've studied every possible mammal milk. We know about cows and goats and water buffaloes, but in the scriptures there's every possible thing. The elephant milk, you can actually get elephant milk in India, believe it or not, to use therapeutically. Just elephants hang around, and they give milk. So and like tiger milk, who milked the tiger? That's what I want to know. And where do you go to get the tiger milk? You got to find someone who's milking tigers. But anyway, so yes, all these things, the main way that they're preserved in India, because it was a country without refrigeration, was to ferment them, which of course uses probiotics. And so everybody in the village takes their milk from their cow to the yogurt guy in the afternoon, and he lets it ferment overnight, and then 6 o'clock in the morning it's ready, and it's super duper homemade, high potency probiotic yogurt, and everybody has that with their dal for their breakfast. And so everybody's using probiotics every day. So there's the choice of which mammal milk you use. Might be camel milk, might be horse milk, and then it's fermented, and there are various ways to ferment and prepare it to do that. So Ayurveda historically didn't use probiotic pills, but they were all over the probiotics, that's for sure.
Okay, awesome. That's good. Yeah, yogurt's very popular in Ayurveda, and I know people who are even vegans, but they'll have a little yogurt because it's so good for the digestive, or a little ghee. Like I'm vegan, but I'll have a little ghee because it's so good. Just especially me as a Vata, I need that ghee, you know. So,
Yes.
so KP, any words of wisdom to wind up today to share with anyone?
Well, I just want people to understand that herbs are food. Food is herbal medicine. The idea is to every single choice that you make is a way to make a choice consciously toward enhancing your health. And if you choose to use, rather than just eating, iceberg lettuce, you eat something with medicinal kind of value. Put broccoli in your salad, if you can get it. Use parsley juice for your edema. Focus on these things that you can actually get in, and make every meal an opportunity to have a healing experience. And it just make a huge difference in your life over time. So good luck with everybody with doing all that. It's been my pleasure to be here with you today. So nice to meet all of you electronically, anyway, and hear your questions.
Yes, and you can learn more about KP at his website, kpkalsa.com. And remember that we have the link up for the Ayurveda Experience e-course, which is fabulous. And as a thank you for being on this webinar with us today, you can receive it at a discounted price. So just click the link. You don't have to put in a coupon code or anything. The discounted price is already up there. And you can start learning about Ayurveda right now and living the Ayurvedic lifestyle. And I know you're going to love it just as much as I do. So tomorrow we'll be back, same time, same place, 5 p.m. Pacific time, with David Crow. And he's going to be talking about Ayurveda and aromatherapy, all the beautiful fragrances that Ayurveda gives us and how we can use those to help our health, body, mind, spirit, and space. So KP, thank you so much. Namaste.
Thanks, Lisa. So nice to see you again.